Hello, Flossie dear. I'm going to read you a story. I'm going to read you a Mrs. Pepperpot story. This is called The Ski Race. Mrs. Pepperpot has done a lot of things in her life, and most of them I've told you about already. But now I must tell you how she went ski racing one day last winter. Mr. Pepperpot had decided to go in for the annual local ski race. He had been a pretty good skier when he was young, so he said to Mrs. Pepperpot, "I don't see why I shouldn't have a go this year. I feel more fit than I have for many years." "That's right, husband, you do that," said Mrs. Pepperpot, "and if you win the cup, you'll get your favourite ginger cake when you come home." So Mr. Pepperpot put his name down, and when the day came, he put on his white anorak and blue cap with a bobble on the top and strings under his chin. He slung his skis over his shoulder and said he would wax them when he got to the starting point. "Righto, best of luck," said Mrs. Pepperpot. She was already greasing the cake tin and stoking the stove for her baking. "Thanks, wife," said Mr. Pepperpot, and went off. It was not before he had turned the corner by the main road that Mrs. Pepperpot caught sight of his tin of wax, which he had left on the sideboard. "What a dunderhead that man is!" exclaimed Mrs. Pepperpot. "Now I shall have to go after him, I suppose. Otherwise his precious skis are more likely to go backwards than forwards, and there'll be no cup in this house today. He's not going to win." So Mrs. Pepperpot flung her shawl round her shoulders and trotted up the road as fast as she could with the tin of wax. When she got near the starting point, there was a great crowd gathered. She dodged in and out to try and find her husband. But everyone seemed to be wearing white anoraks and blue caps. At last she saw a pair of sticks stuck in the snow with a blue cap hanging from the top. She could see the initials PP sewn in red thread inside. "That must be his cap," thought Mrs. Pepperpot. "Those are his initials, Peter Pepperpot. I sewed them myself in red thread, just like that. I'll just drop the wax in his cap, and then he'll find it when he comes to pick up his sticks." As she bent forward to put the wax in the cap, she accidentally knocked it off the stick, and at that moment she shrank so quickly that it was she who fell into the cap, while the tin of wax rolled down into the snow. "No harm done," thought Mrs. Pepperpot. "When he comes along, he'll see me in his cap. Then he can put me down somewhere out of the way of the race, and as soon as I grow large again, I can go home." But a moment later, a big hand reached down, snatched up the cap, and crammed it over a mop of thick hair. The strings were firmly tied, and Mrs. Pepperpot was trapped. "Oh, well," she thought, "I better not say anything before the race starts," for she knew Mr. Pepperpot hated to think anybody might get to know about her shrinking. "Number 46, she heard the starter shout. "On your marks, get set, go!" And number 46, with Mrs. Pepperpot in his cap, glided off to a smooth start. "Someone must have lent in some wax," she thought. "There's nothing wrong with these skis." Anyway, then from under the cap she shouted, "Don't overdo it now, or you'll have no breath left for the spurt at the end." She could feel the skier slow down a little. "I suppose you know who's under your cap," she added. "You've forgotten the wax, so I brought it along, only I fell into your cap instead of the wax." Mrs. Pepperpot now felt the skier's head turn round to see if anyone was talking to him from behind. "It's me, you fool," said Mrs. Pepperpot. "I've shrunk again. You'll have to put me off by the lane to our house. You pass right by, remember." But the skier had stopped completely now. "Come on, man, get a move on," shouted Mrs. Pepperpot. "They'll all be passing you." Is it true that you're the little old woman who shrinks to the size of a pepper pot?" "Of course, you know that," laughed Mrs. Pepperpot. "Am I married to you? Is it my wife who shrinks?" "Yes, yes, but hurry now." "No," said the skier, "if that's how it is, I am not going on with this race at all." "Rubbish," shouted Mrs. Pepperpot. "You must." "Go on. I put the cake in the oven before I went out, and if it's scorched, it'll all be your fault." But the skier didn't budge. "Maybe you'd like me to pop out of your cap and show myself to everybody. Any minute now I might go back to my full size, and then the cap will burst, and the whole crowd will see who is married to the shrinking woman. Come on now. With any luck you may just do it, but there's no time to lose. Hurry!" This worked. The skier shot off at full speed, helping himself to huge strides with his stick. "4!" he shouted as he sped past other skiers. But when they came to the refreshment stall, Mrs. Pepperpot could smell the lovely hot soup, and she thought her husband deserved a break. "We're well up now," she called. "You could take a rest." The skier slowed down to a stop, and Mrs. Pepperpot could hear that there were many people standing around him. "Well done," they said. "You're very well placed. But what's you looking so worried about? Surely you're not frightened of the last lap, are you?" No, nothing like that," said the skier. "It's this cap of mine. I'm dead scared of my cap." But the people patted him on the back and told him not to worry. He had a good chance of winning. Under the cap, Mrs. Pepperpot was getting restless again. "That's enough of that," she called. "We'll have to get on with it now." The people who stood nearest heard the voice and wondered who spoke. The woman who ladled out the soup said, "Probably some loudspeaker." And Mrs. Pepperpot couldn't help laughing. "Nearer the truth than you think," she thought. Then she called out again, "Come on, husband, put that spurt on and let's see if we can make it." And the skier shot away again, leaping many yards each time, the stick stuck into the snow. Very soon Mrs. Pepperpot could hear the sound of clapping and cheering. "What do we do now?" whispered the skier in a miserable voice. "Can you last another minute? Then I can throw the cap off under the fir tree just before we reach the finishing line." "Yes, that will be all right," said Mrs. Pepperpot. And as the skis sped down the last slope, the strings were untied and the cap flew through the air, landing safely under the fir tree. When Mrs. Pepperpot had rolled over and over many times, she found herself growing big once more. So she got up, shook the snow off her skirt, and walked quickly home to her house. From the cheering in the distance, she was sure her husband had won the cup. The cake was only a little bit burnt on the top when she took it out of the oven, so she cut off the black part and gave it to the cat. Then she whipped some cream to put on the top and made a steaming pot of coffee to have ready for her champion husband. Sure enough, Mr. Pepperpot soon came home without the cup. "I forgot to take the wax," he said, "so I didn't think it was worth going in for the race. But I watched it, and you should have seen Paul Peterson today. I've never seen him run like that in all my born days. All the same, he looked very queer, as if he'd seen a ghost or something. When it was over, he kept talking about his wife and his cap, and he wasn't satisfied till he'd telephoned his house and made sure his wife had been there all the time watching the race on television." Then Mrs. Pepperpot began to laugh. And ever since, when she's feeling sad or things are not going just right, all she has to do is remember the day she went ski racing in the wrong cap, and then she laughs and laughs and laughs. Well, that was quite a good story, wasn't it, Flossie? Not bad at all. That's the last one of Mrs. Pepperpot, but there are some more little fairy stories in there, so we'll probably have one of those next time. Lots of love, sweetie pie. Bye.